Hey guys, what's up? So, as per usual, I've been doing a daily quiz for the last few days. Just with the whole situation at the moment, at least it's something to kind of at least ease the boredom. So we're looking at an anime style quiz, which is a Lockin quiz. This is day 4, and we'll be covering Pokemon. And the first question we have is, which was the first Pokemon to be designed? Now, I won't give you too much of a hint as to this one. For those of you who think it's Pikachu, just because it's Ash's Pokemon, or considering that, it's his starter Pokemon, you're completely going off track. It's one that might actually surprise you. And the answer is Rhydon. The creator of Pokemon made the decision that originally Pokemon was supposed to be dinosaur-like, and therefore kind of Rhydon fits that bill. You can also see it within a number of the gyms within the first generation, to have what look like Rhydon as statues. So obviously when they were creating the designs, this was the inspiration behind that. I am a little bit curious to find out why Rhydon appeared before Rhyhorn, but from probably a design point of view, perhaps Rhydon was easier to think up of, and might have been in relation to one of the other dinosaurs that they could draw their inspiration from. The next question is, which Pokemon was originally meant to be Ash's first Pokemon? Now, consider that it's not actually Pikachu, obviously, because that's the Pokemon he has as of now. It's also not one of the original starters. It's Pokemon you might not have thought of, and it actually appears to be quite friendly with Ash a bit later on. I don't think he's ever actually officially caught this Pokemon, but with looking at how Pokemon Sword and Shield is at the moment, with the number of Pokemon that are being caught, Ash has obviously now recently got a Dragonite and a Gengar, both from Generation 1. We don't know where his potential catching team is going to end up being, and what his eventual championship team might look like. And the answer is Clefairy. It was meant to be Clefairy. They chose Pikachu because he was yellow and easy to spot. It was also unique as there were not many yellow-coloured mascots when Pokemon first became created. Initially, there was a toss-up between Pikachu and Clefairy, and being chosen as the lead characters for the merchandising, but Clefairy obviously had a higher presence within the early comic book series that they created before the TV shows. That's often how anime actually get produced. First they come as comic strips, or within magazines, and then they're made into adaptations. However, with the animated series, Pikachu just felt that there'd be more of an appeal to female viewers and mothers, and under the belief that the creature presented the image of a recognisable, intimate pet for children. Children used to have guinea pigs, hamsters, whereas Clefairy didn't have any distinguishable animal-based features. Its colour was also a main part of it, as yellow is a easy colour for children to recognise from a distance. Although saying that, the only real other competing yellow mascot at the time was, as this article says, Winnie the Pooh. Now, question 3 is actually quite easy because it's actually a very recent victory. In which league did Ash finally become a champion? And no, I'm not talking about the Indigo League, because it's not one of the main series leagues. That one I won't count because I know he defeated Drake, but he didn't end up receiving a championship for it. He was recognised for what he did, but he didn't officially win to the level that these other tournaments were produced as. And the answer is the Alolan League. Ash went on to defeat Professor Kukui in order to win. The match involved Ash training his Melmetal in preparation for the battle. During the battle, Ash had his Torracat battle the Incineroar for Professor Kukui, but had to recall him to let it recover, followed up with his Lycanroc to battle it. He then recalled it and sent out his Bravery. Ash was pleased that Lycanroc dealt some damage to Professor Kukui's Bravery, but he ended up losing to it, but then his Rowlet was able to defeat it in an aerial battle. Ash was disappointed to see his Rowlet being knocked out by Professor Kukui's Venusaur, but then sent out his Torracat back to defeat it before recalling him again. Ash then decided to have Pikachu battle Professor Kukui's Empoleon, but then took him back when Pikachu had taken serious damage, replacing him for Melmetal to defeat it, but ended up being knocked out when he sent his Incineroar back out, but then he recalled that. After Professor Kukui sent out his Lucario, Ash sent out Naganadel to battle it. Ash was Ash then had it defeat the Lucario, and then it ends up being almost like an all-out battle between Ash's Torracat versus the Incineroar. They both end up using Inferno Overdrive at the same time, and had a clash with one of the moves. Ash was happy that Torracat defeated the Incineroar, and it ended up evolving during the battle. So, question 4 is, how many tails does Buizel have? It's quite an easy question to go off of. And the answer is, of course, 2 tails. He uses it as like a propeller to spin within the water to protect him at high speed. You can see that a lot within the Sinnoh region. Ash uses his Buizel mostly in battles against the fighting type gym leader, and he also uses it in the water-based gym as well, against Crash Awake. That was a particularly good demonstration of Buizel's power and speed, because he has to end up facing his evolution, which is, of course, Floatzel. Okay, so question 5 is, which Pokemon was voted as most people's favourite in 2020? Probably about a couple of months ago, there was a vote for the current list of favourite Pokemon, and of course, what they ended up doing was like a top 10 list. Some of them aren't particularly surprising, but then again, some of them were. I think as well, with the previous season being the most recent, certain Pokemon kind of stick in your head a lot more than others. And obviously you see from some of the YouTubers, they put like a top 10 list of forgotten Pokemon. This is kind of what has stuck with people as of yet and so far. And the answer is Greninja. I think this is partly because it saw quite a lot of action within Pokemon Sun and Moon, especially within the tournaments. Even though Ash didn't actually win, he got to the finals, and there was a serious battle between his Greninja and the Mega Charizard that was used by his opponent. It also had the clash with the Sceptile in the semi-finals round, which made it for an impressive display. Obviously, with that being the most recent season, before Pokemon Sun and Moon, before Sword and Shield have come out within the anime. This is why people have attached themselves as heavily as they have with Greninja. Also, a lot of people like the design naturally anyway, so even, say, for example, Ash didn't get Froakie to begin with, I'm sure people would still have a very positive view towards Greninja. I've just had a quick look as to the top 10, just if you want to know. 10th was Gengar. That shouldn't be too surprising. It's the first kind of series of Ghost-type Pokemon there have been in the games. It's always been seen as quite powerful. It received a Mega Evolution, and it also has a Gigantamax form. It's very versatile and has high special attack and speed. That means it can hit hard, and if you can get a snowball effect to boost up its stats, it will run over opponents' teams very quickly. Also, the design, a lot of people like the menacing look of it. 9th was Gardevoir. It's quite an elegant Pokemon, though it can be both a male and a female. It's mostly seen as a female Pokemon. It looks quite an emotional-based Pokemon. And again, it's from the Hoenn region. It's something people kind of prefer. 8th was Rayquaza. You had Omega Sapphire, and you had the two adaptations of Ruby and Sapphire that came out only a few years ago. So that's still on people's minds with its Mega Evolution. It's also been seen as quite a popular dragon-type Pokemon in general, and has seen appearances within some of the movies. Number 7 was Garchomp. It's a little bit similar to Rayquaza in that it's, even though it's not classed as a legendary, it's a pseudo-legendary, which means it has very strong overall stats. It coming out in the Sinnoh region, it was associated with Cynthia, who was that region's champion. It has seen popularity within various tournaments, and has itself received a Mega Evolution, and has continued to have support within various games, and it's considered quite diverse. Number 6 was Sylveon. This is because, again, it came out in Pokemon X and Y, so it's not that far away. It's still in people's minds. The appearance is quite nice. It's one of the evolutions. It's one of the latest. I think it is the latest evolution. So that's always going to be quite popular with the fans. Number 5 is another evolution. It's Umbreon. That's also not surprising. It's been a very popular support Pokemon, having quite high defensive stats, so it has seen competitive play. It's generally a popular Pokemon and was used by Gary in the main series. 4 is Charizard. It's a Generation 1 Pokemon, and it's the final evolution of one of the starters. Charizard has always had a lot of fan support, especially since Ash caught a Charmander who had been abused and abandoned by his previous trainer. Ash decided to take it on. It did, when it evolved into Charmeleon and eventually into Charizard, it's always been very much kept to itself. It kind of doesn't follow anyone else but its own orders. Very few times would it actually kind of obey Ash. but the times that it did, it often helped out heavily within the battles. Third is Mimikyu. This is one of those variations of Pikachu type Pokemon. I suppose the way it looks and its design is part of the reason why it's as high as it is up the list. Second is Lucario. It's a powerful fighting-based Pokemon. It's seen its use within competitive play, and a combination fighting and steel type is, I don't know of many. That I think there's another one or two, but it's quite a rare kind of dual typing, so that's the reason for that. And of course, number one was your Greninja. So question 6 is, which type of cereal was discontinued and when? This is a type of Pokemon cereal, but see if you can remember what it was and when do you think it was last produced? And the answer is it was a type of Cheerios with Pokemon shaped marshmallows, and these were discontinued in 2000. I think from what I've seen from some Americans, they describe it a little bit like Lucky Charms for what it is, but I'm from the UK, so I'm not aware of that. I am it's a shame that they decided to stop producing them. Obviously, they weren't making as many sales as they wanted to. It might have been costing Kellogg's a bit too much to be purchasing the use of some of the images to produce anything branded by Pokemon at the time. And considering that the company had been around for a couple of years and had already developed a strong brand image, I just think it was just not enough uptake. In that time, it was probably more difficult and more expensive to promote. You didn't have any form of social media, and therefore everything had to either be televised, or if you had people who would just pick it up from the shelves anyway, or you had your peer pressure from your kids. Those were the main kind of sources of how you would kind of buy into the product. Now here's a follow-up question to that one. Which company made the Pokemon cereal? I think I've actually already mentioned it if you were listening. It's a popular brand within the UK, and it does quite well with its normal ranges anyway. But I suppose this is a way of kind of diversifying their product into seeing whether people would be attracted by different branding, by associating themselves with various other companies. It worked for a length of time, but it kind of fell off the face of the planet. It didn't have enough uptake, or they just couldn't afford to be keeping up with, using having the rights to use the Pokemon within their cereal, within their own branding. And the answer is, of course, Kellogg's. This is one of the more popular cereal brands within the UK, and it has quite a strong foothold within the marketplace. It's a shame they couldn't hold on to introducing them. I don't know, potentially in the future they might be able to do that, but then again, with our sugar tax and all of these kind of health complaints that a lot of people keep coming up with, the chances are it's probably not going to come back to circulation, because if they try, it's a little bit like what's happening in other places. There's not enough support for it, or there are certain people kind of shouting it down. Oh, it's going to, make children obese. So that's often the reason why I can't see this product ever coming back. Okay, so this I've just read over this question, and it's slightly misinterpreted. The question is meant to be which Pokemon card is considered to be the rarest and why. Obviously, you can probably give me the reason for it, and it's probably something you know of anyway, even if it's interestingly never actually been on sale, so actually giving it an exact value is not that easy. And the answer is the Trophy Pikachu Trainer number 1. This hasn't actually ever been sold. However, the next version that's been released, with the next rarest card, has been found on eBay for a selling price of over £1 million. Of course, considering most people can't afford that, it's kind of stuck on the market, and I think whomever the seller is going to be living in a fantasy world if they think that's going to be shifted at any point within the near future. More than likely, it's just going to stay on there, and either the person's going to eventually get bored enough that they actually sell it for something a bit lower, or it will probably go missing at some point. It's just the way things work out. The reason for its rarity is considered this card was first awarded to the champions of the qualifying rounds of the Japanese Pokemon card game official tournament, which was held on the first day of the 2-day event held at Makuhari Messe Convention Center in Chiba on June the 14th and 15th, 1997. This card was reprinted later in the year and awarded to the champions from both age divisions of each regional Mega Battle Conference held between 97 and 98, and it was reprinted and distributed in the same manner to the champions of each regional Mega Battle between July and August 98. The card was reprinted again and awarded to the champions of each regional Challenge Road 99 summer event between July and August 1999, but the cards are incredibly rare to find, and obviously the very first original versions are probably any that have been produced will be either incredibly rare for any near mint, and of course even damaged ones will probably be worth quite a bit. So question 9 is, how many copies of Pokemon Black and White were sold in Japan in 2 days? Now, I'm not expecting an exact figure. Chances are you won't get to it. But I'm looking to the nearest 100,000. Remember, this is how many were sold within the first 2 days. So have a guess and see what you think, whether you're going to be surprised with the answer or not. Considering this is the 5th generation in Unova, we had access to the internet and various means of selling and distributing, and I believe this was I think this was one of the only Pokemon games that was simultaneously released. Don't quote me on that, but I think they had organised it so it was rather than where they stagger the releases between Japan, America, Europe, and do it by continent. This one they just outright released it. I think the purpose of that was so that everyone could experience the games at the same time. As a UK citizen, I have found it quite annoying that obviously the Japanese get theirs first, which means by the time I get my copy over a month later, they've already completed the game and probably quite a way into developing their competitive teams. The same goes with America. It can be hit and miss. Sometimes we do get Pokemon games before they do. Sometimes they, more often than not, I think they get theirs before us, and so we're kind of behind the 8th ball on both counts there. And the answer is 2.6 million copies. I don't think this is too surprising. Some people at that time probably it's had been quite a while since we had the financial crash. I think people's wages were going up, so they had more access to buy on luxury goods, of which Pokemon is. And I just think that a lot of people were excited. It was a brand new version. It wasn't like a remake, and so we had a load of new Pokemon. The information was also quite under control, unlike with Sun and Moon where there were leaks. I think they kept a better control on the information that was distributed, and they did so in their own time rather than some people hacking into these systems and releasing bunches of information before the company was ready to release it. And the final question is, what is the name of the spin-off series for Pokemon Sword and Shield? There has been another spin-off series based on the original Pokemon Red and Blue, but I've seen this new spin-off, and I think it's quite decent. It actually introduces you to some of the gym leaders before you actually, before they've actually been shown within the actual series. So you get a little bit of a background into kind of like their mentality, what they prefer to do, which I can see is quite a good thing, so you have more of a connection with that character. And the answer is Pokemon Twilight Wings. There have been, as of yet, about 2 episodes. I think the next one is coming out on the 17th of April. I can't remember what time. I think it was about 2 o'clock Japanese Standard Time. Again, don't quote me on that. But it kind of makes sense to base it off their time rather than ours. So thank you for taking part in the Lockin quiz day 4 for Pokemon. What did you think of the questions? Leave any comments you have about the direction of questions, whether I should make them more challenging or not. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.